Welcome to another episode of KTM Summer Grill. My name is Simon Chapman, Speed Cafe reporter, and today we're going to talk about the Liqui Moly Bathurst 12 Hour. And joining me on today's episode is the voice of the Bathurst 12 Hour, Richard Crail. Thanks for jumping on board.
Hey Simon, how are you?
Yeah, good mate. Hey, really interesting sort of time, I guess, for Australian motorsport at the moment. It feels like a really long time since we had the Bathurst 12 Hour, but it's hard to believe that the last edition was basically right before the COVID pandemic hit.
Yeah, it was strange. And I remember being there and there was talk of this virus floating around, and especially from some of our friends who'd come down from Asia, both from a media point of view and a competitor point of view. And it was always in the back of your mind, but you never thought too much about it. And it was just one of those things that pops up. And I think at that point, we all thought it would just go away, and we focused on going car racing and putting on the fastest Bathurst 12 Hour that had ever been run. And not but a few weeks later, the world imploded. And with the 12 Hour such an international event now, it became impossible to run it in 2021, of course. So, yeah, it was a strange scenario not having that race as part of the landscape, because in 10 years of being a GT Enduro, it's become such a staple of our calendar that it was strange not having it part of the year. But fortunately, it's back in 22, and can't wait to see the next evolution of Australia's international endurance race.
Yeah, it's obviously fantastic news, I guess, in the last couple of months. The word coming through that the borders are opening up, that obviously allowing international competitors to come and play. We initially had a calendar announcement that had the event sort of in an awkward time, which was going to clash with, I believe, the World Endurance Championship and the IMSA Sports Car Championship in March. But fortunately, organisers bringing that date back towards more of a traditional sort of position. What sort of impact is that going to have as far as maybe competitors next year?
I think positive. The date clash was an interesting one, and there are so many moving pieces with this event that need to come into place. There's the supercars calendar domestically, and the fact that a lot of the supercars infrastructure goes into running the Bathurst 12 Hour, but there's also team involvement as well across the board. And as well as anyone, Simon, you wander the 12 Hour paddock and you catch up with all your supercar mates before you go to the first supercar round of the year. So there's such a massive interest domestically in that it needs to stand on its own from a local calendar. But then there's the international side of things, and it's a round of the Intercontinental GT Challenge, which is growing. It's got great manufacturer support, so it needs to align with SRO's plans for that, but also British GT, the GT World Challenge Europe, GT World Challenge Australia as well. There are so many moving pieces. It's not like just setting a supercar date and going, okay, that's where the event is going to be. So there's some back and forwards, but I think the date change is positive. I love the fact that it goes back to opening the Aussie motorsport season, because that's where it's established itself over the last few years. It's the warming up point for the year. I love starting the year at Mount Panorama with that race. And I think it works internationally as well, because the biggest concern of all from a driver perspective was that the likes of a Matt Campbell or a Lawrence Vantore or a Chris Meese, these gun for hire GT drivers, they're all committed in either WEC or IMSA or both. And we didn't want to lose those. They need to be part of this race. They're such a fundamental part of the 12 Hour. So I think it's a win-win. It adds some time pressure for sure, getting that event in February when we've had such a short lead up compared to what we usually have. But I think from a show point of view and retaining that date equity in February, I think it's been really important.
I think before COVID-19 hit, that last edition of the Bathurst 12 Hour, it really felt like that was the year of the pro race. It was always, there was a lot of emphasis on the pro runners. ProAm had sort of subsided a little bit, and AM was, largely like a secondary thought for a lot of people there. Does this event coming back take any edge off, sort of the state of play in that event? We were so sort of, I guess, wrapped up in some of those entries that came. We had like M Sport coming down. We had a lot of factory presence in the GT sort of realm. So, what does the 2022 event look like? Are we going to have more of those pro competitors coming back, or do we see more of a shift towards Pro-Am and Am?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question, Simon. And as you and I talk, it's probably hard to get a real read on what the market dictates. And I think a lot of it will be the market dictating and how many entries we get in pro and how many come in Pro-Am. I think there's a place for both I think there's a place for both in the 12-hour. And we've seen in the past, the Pro-Am battle sort of works its way into the outright fight. And if you've got some really good AM drivers who can keep with the pace of the pros and play the safety car cards right, you put your gun driver in at the end, and there's absolutely no difference between a pro car and a Pro-Am car. So if you get to that final hour on the lead lap, you plug your pro in, and you're as good a chance to win that race as anybody. And we've seen in the past, Kenny Habul got onto the podium a couple of years ago, that famous podium finish for Sun Energy One Racing, which was so good to see. That's a Pro-Am entry, but because they played their cards right, they played the strategy right, they got there. But I think one of the appeals of the 12-hour is that it is a pro race, and you don't see that a lot in GT3 racing around the world. This is an opportunity to get the best GT drivers around, mixed with some of the best supercar drivers, full-time pro racing car drivers in awesome GT3 cars run by the best teams. You don't get to see that a lot. I think it's one of the real special attributes of the 12-hour, but also the IGTC championship as well as a whole, like the Spa 24. It's a pro race at the front. You got to be a pro car to try and win it. So I think it's a unique selling point. And personally, I'd be disappointed if it went away from that. But at the same time, I don't think it would take away an enormous amount of the show, because ultimately it comes back to those pro guys at the end fighting out for the victory.
All right, last one from me, Crailsy. We're only a few months away from this event kicking off. Can you give us some insight as to maybe which teams and which drivers, high profile, might be turning up?
I can. Well, I can tell you, Simon, that Grupper M Racing will definitely be back. The Mercedes AMG team that are now contenders in the DTM every year, they will be back. They're going to run a full Intercontinental GT campaign. They were third on debut in 2019, finished second on the road in 2020, copped a 30-second pit lane penalty for a pit lane infringement, which you can bet they'll never do again. Dropped them back to sixth, but they've been exciting to watch with guys like Raffaele Marciello, exciting Italian driver doing the job at the end of the race. I've spoken to Daryl O'Young at Craft Bamboo Racing, a two-time winner of the race. He loves Bathurst. He's been sitting through 3 weeks of quarantine back home in Hong Kong after trying to get to Kyalami, but he's very keen to return. So I expect Craft Bamboo back. You would think that Audi will have a presence as always, because the Melbourne Performance Centre and Audi Sport Customer Racing Australia put on such a good show every year, and they're desperate to win that race. They've had some horrific luck. And you'd think Porsche as well, with their motorsport investment in Australia, I expect them to have a role to play, and private teams like Grove Racing with their 911 GT3R will be right in the mix. Earl Bamber Motorsport, who've got a great presence here with Kiwi mates of yours, Simon. So I'm pretty confident you're going to see a really good spread of field. Will it be a little bit compromised with the current situation in the world? Probably yes, let's be honest. It's difficult times. Will we get everyone that might have come in non-pandemic times? Probably not. But I don't think there's any doubt that when we get to the 11-hour mark on Sunday, the 27th of February, we'll be rubbing our hands together going, right, who's going to win Bathurst today? And it'll be 4 or 5 cars that you could throw a blanket over fighting out for the win, as has been the case every year for the last decade.
Yeah, it's shaping up to be a great return in 2022. Thanks, Crailsy, for coming on board today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, mate. Anytime. Looking forward to the race.
Cheers. Well, that was KTM Summer Grill, your Bathurst 12-hour preview. Stay tuned to speedcafe.com for another episode tomorrow. As part of this year's KTM Summer Grill, each week KTM is giving away the perfect summer beach pack, which includes an umbrella, cap, gym bag and key holder. To enter the draw, head to speedcafe.com or hit the link in the description below.